Hey everybody, what's going on? It's James here with Crypto Common Sense, and I have your Bitcoin/cryptocurrency market update for Sunday, October the 11th. So we just had our weekly close, and I've taken a look at social media a little bit. I haven't been on there a whole lot today, but took a look at social media. Seems to be a lot of bullishness, and thought we'd talk about that. Thought we'd talk about what I see in the markets, what I'm seeing in the charts, and what I expect going forward. So before I jump into the content for this video, please do me a huge favor. Hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you have not already, make sure you check the description for a link where you can join the Patreon. That gives you access to more frequent updates. Also helps to keep the channel going. So first things first, anytime Bitcoin has one of these moves up, people do get excited. And I totally understand the excitement. It's fun to make money. If you have an investment and you just put money in and you're up on it, it's fun. If you have an investment that maybe you're underwater on, it's nice to feel like, oh gosh, maybe this thing is finally gonna come back for me. But from a technical standpoint, everything that's going on right now, it's not as bullish as what a lot of people are making it sound like, right? I'm seeing a lot of people talk about 16K, 17K, new all-time highs, etc., etc. And this is what happens every time Bitcoin pumped. It's the same thing that happened back here, right, before we had the big move down. So let's just zoom out for a second and let's take a look at a daily chart and kind of look at some levels and some things that we can watch for. So the first thing that I want to point out is on the bullish side of things, this did break the 50-day moving average, and back on the 9th, it came back down for a retest of it and moved off of it. And that's a pretty textbook bullish retest, right? There's no other way to put that. That looks bullish, right? When you get a bounce like that, it's bullish. If you go back in history, you can see that the 50 is not a super strong line. People like to make it sound like it is. It's not super strong. It does kind of, chop through it and then come back down, and sometimes it chops down and comes right back up. So it's not the best line in the world, but typically speaking, when you break through it, a lot of times you will get a further move up if you retest it. Like here, we broke through it, but there was no retest. Right? It just kind of went sideways and then collapsed. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Here was a retest. Broke through it back in April, retested it, and then up off of it, right? Here it broke through, retested it, big move up. So when I look at that and I see a 50-day moving average that's busted, and I see a retest, it's bullish, right? There's no doubt it's bullish. But on the flip side, you got to look at where this came to. And this isn't one of those, okay, well, I'm going to go back in hindsight and draw some lines. I posted this stuff on social media. I posted this stuff in the Patreon. I shared this openly with people before it happened, right? We had this line here, and we had this upward sloping line. So this is our trend line. This started pulling back a few days back, and everybody's flipping bearish, right? But it was still sitting on top of the support, and what I was looking for was some type of move up toward this level up here, if it was going to move up, right? I wasn't long or anything. Right, I did buy my spot back because I had sold my spot at, I don't remember what it was, 10.6 or something, and bought it back down around 10.550. But I didn't open up like a leverage swing long or anything. But the other thing that made this interesting, one of the reasons that I was kind of curious about the top of this wedge was this. And again, I'm not trying to say I called it. I certainly didn't call it, right? I just had some lines drawn there and it was one possibility. But if we draw some Fibonacci levels from the top back in August to the bottom right here in September, we're going to be able to put a golden pocket on here. And there's our golden pocket. Try to get it perfect. It's pretty close to perfect. Maybe like $1 or $2 lower than that. By golly, it's close enough. It's within a couple of dollars, right? Looks something like that. So essentially what I was watching was how this lined up with the golden pocket. It's very, very suspect to me that would pump up, hit that golden pocket, and hit the top of that wedge at the same time. And so when you get a move like this, what this looked like to me a few days ago before it pumped this high, what I was thinking was it was actually a triangle, right? At the time, that's what I thought. I thought, okay, this is probably, at first I thought it was a bear flag, right? And then I was like, no, looking more like a triangle, right? Like this, with the move down afterward. And yes, this is why you have to wait for confirmation, and you got to wait for the pattern to actually break, because it just keeps changing. And that's not like, oh, okay, he's changing his bias. No, it's just how trading works. You have to wait for the pattern to break. Like right now, this looks like a rising wedge, but if it suddenly goes up, it ain't going to be a wedge, right? But it's looking more and more like a wedge. Could end up being more like what I thought originally ended up being a bear flag, right? Could end up being no flag at all. Could just go right back up, obviously. But right now it looks like a wedge to me. And so I'm kind of watching this. I did sell some of my spot. Now remember, I don't have a whole lot of spot to begin with. I just had that little HODL portfolio. So I did sell some of the spot on the weekly close. You know, if it goes up, breaks 12K convincingly, I'll probably buy it back and it'll be a loss. It'll be a losing trade, right? But it's not a lot of money to begin with. You know, there's only a few Bitcoin in the entire HODL portfolio. So I'm not super concerned about it. I wouldn't take some money off the table because this looks a little bit sketchy, but there wasn't an actual trade set up that I was willing to actually take like a leverage position where I was trading with, you know, my full trade fund or anything like that. But this does look bearish to me. You know, on one side you've got that 50 moving average and it broke through it, and that's great. It moved up off it quite a bit, but now we're inside of this potential rising wedge. We're also tagging that 61.8, which Bitcoin absolutely loves, right? When it's going up, it loves to pull back to it and then move up. When it's going down, it loves to bounce up to it and then continue its down moves. So, you know, I am watching that. Also, if you did consider this a head and shoulders, you know, we do have a line somewhere around this area, you know, if you're counting the tails, which I like counting the tails, but if you're more conservative, this was the lineup around this area here, maybe even this area here. So it gets kind of muddled, right? Because in some cases it looks like it's support and it's above it. In other cases it looks like, oh no, that's resistance and it's below it, right? So I'm kind of watching that. You zoom out to a weekly level, you draw a horizontal line back here. You've got a weekly resistance sitting up around that level. Looks like it's been tested, hasn't broke through that, right? We have a monthly support level sitting down there, right? Looks like this month, September, closed on top of it. It actually closed just underneath it, but closed right on it and bounced up. So kind of looking at that, right? Lots of levels here. And this is what I'm saying. I don't want to get into a big over leveraged trade because it really could. It can always go either way, but right now it's more of a coin flip than other times, right? I saw somebody posting on Twitter, some big guru or whatever, saying that charts don't lay out probabilities, they only lay out possibilities. I couldn't disagree more. If we're trading possibilities, we might as well be flipping coins and gambling, right? Charts absolutely lay out probabilities. If you go look into technical analysis, that's literally what it is. You can look at the patterns and you can look at historically how accurate is this pattern. Historically, if you have, for example, a rising wedge, what percentage of the time does it break down? Historically, if you have a head and shoulders, what percentage of the time does it break down? Right? That's exactly what technical analysis is doing. It's allowing you to, look at it and try to find the most probable scenario, not the guaranteed scenario. That's impossible, right? The only guarantee is there is no guarantee. But those are some levels I'm watching on that daily chart. And, if things start to suddenly turn bullish, like I said, I have no problem buying that spot back for more than I sold it for. No problem. If it goes down, however, then, it's not so much about making money. It's not like, oh, okay, I can't wait to buy this back cheaper. It's more about just kind of conserving some of the profits I made over the last few weeks or few months when a lot of those alts pumped and I was, moving some of those alts back to Bitcoin. Like, for example, the OMG, right? I had quite a bit of OMG. It pumped up, whatever it was, 1,100% versus Bitcoin. So I sold some of that OMG back to Bitcoin. I took that extra Bitcoin and I kind of took that risk off the table. So we'll see. It's could go either way, like I said. As far as RSI goes, I really don't see any clean downward sloping resistance, right? So this is kind of a weird deal. It's above 50. It's kind of in that upper, area there. So that's more bullish than bearish when you have high RSI like that. But the thing is RSI gets a bad rap because people try to oversimplify it and they try to, oh, well, it's over 50. It must be bullish. And I haven't found that to be all that accurate, right? So I'm not too worried about that. I'm really just kind of watching to see if we come down and start forming any type of trend lines or anything. And I'm not seeing any on the daily chart right now. Okay. As far as volume goes, take a look at volume. It's not non-existent, but it's pretty low, right? This is a fairly low volume pump here, and low volume pumps tend to be bearish in nature. If you look, the larger bars are the red bars, right? And so typically that's a sign of distribution, but we'll see. If we go over to a 3-day chart, some interesting things happened on this chart, and probably the most interesting of all is that it managed to break outside of this red box, which is what I keep affectionately calling the bear market box, right? So it did break out on it. It did ride this green trend line, bounced off of it, had this converging purple trend line going down at the same time. So if you guys remember, I was bullish, right? Even as a bear, I was bullish back here when this was happening. And when we had these tweezer bottoms, I said, hey, I think we're going to hit, I think I said at the time, I think we'll hit, I don't know what I said, 10.5K or, 10.5K before 9,600 or, 11K, whatever it was. I said we'd pump before we hit 9,600. And we did. And then we started coming back down, right? Found support in this support back here, this horizontal support, and we've bounced off of it. So, it's out of the bear market box. So again, this is kind of one of those reasons why I don't want to take an over leveraged position or even a leveraged position right now, because there's all these mixed signals, right? This looks more bullish than bearish. Totally. I don't really see anything in this 3-day chart that says, oh, this is bearish, right? This definitely looks more bullish to me, right? So we'll kind of wait and see on that one and see how it plays out. Now on the weekly charts, a little bit different story. We take a look at this. On the bull side, we're obviously still well above this upward sloping support. I kind of consider this here an outlier, a little bit of an overreaction to the news back here, right? And again, news doesn't move markets, but people's reaction to that news can definitely have an impact. This was already set to go down, and then it just, really went down with the panic that kicked in. So we still have the upward sloping line, still above the 19-week moving average, right? So those are both good. I also view this as kind of a wonky W. Like if you look at this, down, up, higher low, higher high. So that is some bullish structure starting to form up there. So that's interesting. But then I go down and look at RSI, and it's kind of a mixed bag of tricks, because yes, it did bounce off the top of this box, which is kind of like the support or resistance, for bear markets, bull markets. See this here? Last bull market just stayed on top of it. So that's bullish. But then at the same time, we've got this downward sloping trend line. And right now it looks like it's above it, but that's just because it's a new week. It technically stopped right on that trend line, right? So if we do this, you'll see it stopped right on that trend line. So this week is going to be a key week. If it can break above that, I think it's probably going to take out this high back here. And if it can't break above that, then I think this is probably just a dead cat bounce before we get further downside. And again, that would make sense when you start thinking about the fact that we didn't just tag that golden pocket, right? So that's how this ends up playing out. We could draw up a trend extension, and this has changed a little bit since last week because we put in a higher high here. But if we go from the top to the bottom and then we pull it back, then we get a trend extension that looks like this. Make sure I'm on a regular chart. Last time I did this, I was on a log chart and I had to make a note in the video, like an overlay. But that gives us a target down around 88.25. So if we put a horizontal line on there, that'll be right about there, okay? And then an extension down around 7,100 or 7,200 down there. So let's kind of keep those two levels in mind. And we'll put some fibs up there, because if you're a bull, right, you got to understand that just because it comes back down here doesn't mean that the market is going to crash. Like, a lot of people don't remember this, because I guess a lot of people, I don't know if they came in 2019, like during that little pump, or what the deal is, but like in bull markets, you still get really, really deep pullbacks, right? Like seriously, look at this. This was 2017, which was a completely parabolic market. And you still got here from 3,000 all the way down to about 1,700 or so. From here, it was from 5,000 down to around 3,000, right? And what these were doing, in case you don't know this, what these were doing, we're pulling back to the golden pocket, right? See it? Loves to pull back to that golden pocket. And just like I said, when it's going up, or excuse me, when it's going down, loves to pull back to that golden pocket. Did it right there. Then right here, I think it pulled back to the 50. Pull back to the 50 on this one before crashing, right? Loves its golden pocket. draw some fibs from this one to this one, came up golden pocket. Draw some fibs from this move down to this move, came up golden pocket. I mean, Bitcoin is one of the craziest and most clean charts there is when it comes to hitting that golden pocket. And if you look at this pump that happened back here, guess where it started from? From the move back in 2018 to the top in 2019, back down, golden pocket, consolidation sideways, and poof, the move up, right? So even if this is a new quote-unquote bull market, which it could be, I don't think it is, but eventually I've got to be wrong, about this, still being a bear market, and it might have already happened. I mean, obviously, if this never goes back down here, then I'm already wrong and I just don't know it yet, okay? But if we draw some fibs from down here to the top, 38.2 is a very common pullback and before more trend continuation, so you'll get a pullback and then more up move after that. So in this case, that would be down around like 9,200-ish. If we pull all the way back down to the 61.8, it's 71.54. See where that's at? 71.54. Let's take the fibs off. Right there. Right there, that blue line, which is what? That is the 61.8 extension, right? So you got 1.618 lines up with that fib. So again, the moral of the story is this could be the up move. This could be A, B, C type of corrective move, right? And I'm not an Elliott wave trader, so maybe I shouldn't use the term ABC. Maybe I should just say, down, up, down, or whatever. But this could be some type of corrective move, and then you could still get more upside after this, and that could be your bull market. It wouldn't shock me. In fact, at this point, I'm a little tired of this market, ranging sideways. I think I'd be pretty happy if it just picked a direction and went with it, whether that be down or whether that be up. Let's just pick a trend and let's start trending again. Trends are much more profitable to trade. So let's just say hypothetically that ended up being the case. Then you'd end up having a trend extension that you could draw. Well, I'm not sure what's going on with my trend extension. Let's try again. You could draw a trend extension that looks like this, right? From the bottom there to the top. And let's say it pulled back all the way down here. Boom. And look at this. There you go, right? There'd be your levels. So your target would be 15,796, and if it hit its extension, you'd have your new all-time high. So it's possible. It's possible that we're in a bull market. It's possible that all we're actually waiting for is a correction, and that's fine. Like I said, at this point, I would be okay with that, right? I don't have any plans to load up on Bitcoin regardless, unless it just goes crazy low. But I would really like to, see, really, I'd like to see an uptrend establish itself so that I could take, some of my fiat, put it into Bitcoin with the sole purpose of trading Bitcoin pairs, because it would open up the doors to allow for more trade opportunities. Right now, a lot of times I'll see an opportunity on a Bitcoin chart and I can't trade it because it's a Bitcoin pair. So if I want to go trade, LTC, BTC, you got to have BTC to do that, right? So yeah, we'll see. I'm, looking for that pullback. I don't want to call it a crash because I think it's premature to start talking about any type of crash. I really feel like the only way Bitcoin crashes, quote unquote, I was talking to a Discord member about this tonight. I think the stock market has to crash for Bitcoin to crash. And I think that's going to happen, which is why I'm so bearish. But make no mistake, even as a quote unquote bear, if the stock market doesn't crash, I don't think Bitcoin crashes on its own. I don't think Bitcoin just suddenly starts falling apart while the stocks are going up. I think what happens is the stock market crashes and pulls Bitcoin down with it. If you look at this is actually what's called a megaphone pattern. It's this broadening wedge where you're getting higher highs and lower lows. This is a monthly chart of the US 500, the S&P 500. So you've got this broadening wedge, which is by itself a bearish pattern. And then on top of it, you have this long running divergence that started back in January of 2018. This thing just keeps plugging in lower highs on its RSI while plugging in higher highs on its price action. So, I'm just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. We've obviously got a very clear trend line being established here, a downtrend on RSI, while we're uptrending on price. So they don't agree with one another. And what I'm kind of wondering is if we end up getting a rejection right here on this, third touch of our trend line, maybe get up here to this line up here and get a rejection, and then finally see this thing fall apart. And of course, again, this is a monthly chart, so this would line up quite nicely with right around the elections. And I have some opinions about the political things going on and the effect they'll have on the markets, but because I don't want to get into politics and all that stuff, because it's just a mental drain. And it's the thing about politics, you're not going to change somebody's mind. If somebody is on the left, they're on the left. And when they talk to you about it, they're not talking to you so that they can find out how to change to the right. They're talking to you so that they can either change your mind or argue with you. And if they're on the right, it's the same exact thing. You're not going to convince them to switch to the left. They're just going to try to convince you to switch to the right. And that's both sides. The other night we had the VP debates here in the US, and I went and looked at the feeds of my left-leaning friends, and they all thought that Kamala Harris was wiping the floor with Pence. And then I went over to the feeds of my conservative-leaning friends, and they all thought, guess what? They all thought Pence wiped the floor with Harris. It was both, right? It's just your bias. If you're biased to the left, you thought the left won. If you're biased to the right, you thought the right won. So there's no need to get into politics and all that. All I'll say is this election is shaping up to be one heck of a mess, right? With all this mail-in stuff, whether you support it or not, just the sheer logistics of trying to count all these mail-in ballots. In history, it's always, we know right away, like that night, who the president is going to be for the next term. And this year, we're not going to know, right? They're going to announce, or they should announce who they think won, but then all these mail-in ballots are going to come flowing in, and we won't really know. And imagine the absolute chaos if those polls show on November 3rd that, one or the other won. Who cares? Let's say one of them won. And let's say that a week or 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, all of a sudden, we just counted the mail-in ballots. No, the other side won. Can you imagine the complete and utter chaos? And you're telling me that's not going to have an effect on the stock market? Just a lot to think about. There's so many unknown variables right now. I just think it's important to remember that nobody has a crystal ball, right? That's one thing that's guaranteed, is nobody knows what's going to happen. I certainly don't know what's going to happen. I've never met anybody who knew what was going to happen. All we can do is kind of look at the charts and do the very best we can to try to trade it the best we can. But there is a very big difference in trading and investing, and don't forget that, right? Investing is a whole different ballpark. A lot of people invest with the, expectation that they're going to hold this for 30 years or 40 years, right? Even if this market starts to crash, I don't think a lot of people are going to run out and start cashing out their 401ks, at least not at first, right? So who knows? Who knows how crazy this thing is going to get? For me personally, I'm going to continue focusing mainly on intraday charts, right? 15-minute charts, 1-hour charts, 4-hour charts. Those are my bread and butter, right? Whether that market is going up or down, I can make money on those smaller time frames. But as far as the bigger time frames go, I'm still macro bearish. I still think bad times are ahead for the U.S. economy. Still think bad times are ahead for the stock market. And as as collateral damage, if you will, I think crypto is going to take its fair share of that trauma, okay? But for the short term, I think it's a very mixed bag of tricks. I think that there are certainly bullish signals and bearish signals on these multiple time frames, with the exception of the 3-day. I feel like the 3 days, I don't really feel like there's anything bearish sitting there right now. And on the weekly chart, again, this could certainly end up being some kind of wonky W. Could end up being, high, higher, low. Well, this was a lower high, obviously, but lower high, higher low, higher high. So that could be the beginning of some bullish structure, right? And then over on that daily chart, like I said, my main focus right now is on this potential rising wedge, and also on the fact that this just tagged our golden pocket. So not in a current position. That might change 2 minutes after I shoot the video, but I did, like I said, take some of my spot off the table, and I'm just going to be a little bit cautious about putting that fiat back into the market for right now. All right. With all that being said, please remember that I am just some guy sitting in a spare bedroom. So nothing in this video is financial advice. You should always do your own due diligence and seek out professional financial advice from a licensed financial advisor before making any type of investment in cryptocurrency, the stock market, or precious metals. This is James with Crypto Common Sense. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment, and if you haven't already, please make sure you join the Patreon. And as always, please trade safe.